I took a gap semester a couple of years ago and decided that I should take a road trip with a buddy who was also taking a semester off from school. We're from the Midwest and planned our trip to take a big circle from Ohio to LA, up to Portland, and then on the way back home. We're outdoorsy guys, so we knew we were trying to hit some wilderness along the way. We're about a month into the trip and just leaving Portland, where we were taking a break from camping every night while on the road. Itching to get back on the road and into the wilderness, my buddy finds a hike that looks sort of interesting. It was an abandoned railroad about 2 hours east of Portland. He had found the GPS coordinates on some site, maybe Reddit, and it said that there was an abandoned railroad with a few tunnels and a massive trestle that spanned a huge gorge. Sounded pretty cool, so I was in. We drive my Volvo station wagon towards this coordinate. If you've never been to Oregon before, it's beautiful. Foggy, never-ending views of thick pine forests. The type of place you can barely see 20 feet in any direction because of how dense the trees are. For the last hour of this 2-hour drive, we were driving on only dirt logging roads. We hadn't passed a single car or seen any signs of life since turning off a rural highway. It was creepy. Endless, dark forests for hours. Stop. I hit the brakes. My buddy is squinting at his phone. Looks like we're at the coordinate. I pulled to the side of the one-lane road and put my Volvo in park. Dense trees are still all around us, but I can see up ahead that there's a linear gap in the canopy. I guess that's the railroad. We hop out of the car and I load up my backpack with my camera, headlamp, water, and pepper spray and a knife. After a second thought, I put my knife in my pocket. This railroad has been abandoned for about 50 years. This means that while you can still see the tracks while standing on them, thick brush has filled in the entire swath that's typically cleared on either side of the tracks. It has nearly filled the space between the rails, except for a foot-wide path that's been maintained by deer, elk, bear, and maybe some humans occasionally. I notice my buddy is also looking at a private property sign that's fading into a tree nearby. He looks at me and I shrug. We start walking. The tracks are dead straight. This means that we can see a couple 100 yards down the center of this green tunnel of vegetation, as if I'm in a very narrow alleyway that never ends. To either side, I can barely see 10 feet. We walk and we walk. Honestly, a boring hike, considering there was no view and it was dead straight. But we knew that the tunnel was up ahead, so we kept going. I kept myself busy trying to pace my stride with each railroad tie. Step after step, we walk about 3 miles away from the car into the woods. Suddenly I stop, and my buddy bumps into my backpack. I had just looked up from my feet and was staring into a looming tunnel in front of us. Covered in moss, the entrance surrounded a black hole that went right into the mountainside. Again, we shrugged and turned on our headlamps before walking in. Graffiti covered what wasn't covered with moss, and moss was starting to cover areas that were covered by graffiti. Our headlamps dimly lit the walls covered with fairly creepy stuff. I stared eye to eye with a 20-foot-tall mummy head that was made with white paint. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face because it was so dark, and we couldn't yet see the end of the tunnel. Drips of water echoed off the walls, and my buddy and I quickly walked down the tracks in silence. I had my knife out at my side. I was relieved to get out. From the exit of the tunnel, I could already see a massive gorge up ahead. The tracks went across a wooden bridge that screamed PNW. It was easy to forget about the creepiness of the tunnel, and I looked forward to busting out my camera. Once I set foot on the bridge, I realized the danger of crossing something that hasn't been maintained in 50 or so years. The wood was clearly aged and in some places rotten, but the view was incredible. We balanced on the steel tracks and walked to the center of the trestle, where we could see a river about 500 feet below. horrible logging-scarred mountains across the gorge. I noticed places where the boards had broken through, and I hoped that nobody had fallen. Instead of turning back after getting some good shots, we decided to keep going. The sun was getting into a late afternoon angle and was blocked by the steep mountains around us. We quickly walked off the bridge and back into our green tunnel. For some reason, I started to have second thoughts. I don't know why they came now, but I slowed my pace and started thinking about how I would ask my buddy to turn around. Before I was going to turn around and ask Nate, I glanced up the tracks ahead and directly into someone's eyes about 200 yards away. I stop in my tracks and feel a cold rush to my hands and head. The person staring at me has stopped too. I see another man's head poke around his. And there's two of them, I whisper back to Nate. Slowly, we start walking down the green tunnel towards the men, away from our car miles behind us. They're walking slowly towards us. As we get closer, I start to walk faster out of fear. Bouncing on the man's chest is a large bush knife. He's wearing filthy clothes and has long matted hair, and he hasn't broken eye contact. A revolver is tucked into his pants, and he's carrying a rifle with a magazine. At this point, it's too late to turn back, and I realize that my buddy and I are going to have to squeeze by these men on the narrow gap between the tracks. The brush is pulling at my sleeves on either side. "How's it going?" I nervously ask as I squeeze by the men while avoiding eye contact. I count 4 guns and a stench of BO. I'm unsettled by the way these guys look, and I have a feeling I never have felt around someone else. They say nothing and quietly push past us. I keep hurrying away, and before I know, they're out of sight when I look behind me and past Nate. I turn to Nate to give him my what the fuck face. After walking silently for 10 minutes, we stop. I don't know what to say. I don't want to walk deeper in, but I also don't want to walk back towards where the creepy dudes are going. Suddenly, loud moaning and shrieking starts coming from the dense woods off the side of the tracks. It sounds like it's about 100 yards away. It doesn't sound human, but it sounds like it's in agony. That was the final straw. We bolt back towards the cars. I'm not a runner, but we ran back over the bridge, through the black tunnel, and through the endless green that surrounded us. Finally, I see the logging road up ahead where our car is parked. I stop running and I hear a truck idling. I can start to see it through the bush. A big old F-350 lifted pickup truck idling right behind my car. My station wagon looks comically small in comparison. I can see the 2 men sitting in the truck, their doors open and guns out, staring directly at us and waiting. Nate and I shrug to each other again, but this time with fear in our eyes. "Just get in the car," I stammer to Nate. We hop in, and I stare at the men in our rearview mirror. We wait while my heart is pounding. Are they going to kill us? I think. My knife and pepper spray are useless. After waiting what felt like an hour, the men haven't taken their eyes off us once. We can't back up given how close they are behind us. I notice a fairly solid-looking shoulder to the road to my right, and decide I should try to pull a quick U-turn and get away. So that's what I did. I turned the wheel all the way and floored it. Thankfully, my car made the turn and I was able to clear the back of their truck. We drove as fast as we could down the logging road in silence. No truck behind us. Our dust plume rose up and hid the scene we had just been in, and I drove all the way to Idaho that night. I had my eye on the rearview mirror the entire time. Okay, so this happened when I was around 9 years old. I'm 25 now, and it's something I will never forget. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I live in a terraced house, 4 houses combined, and my neighbors and I each have our own little patio. There's a small road 10 meters from my yard, where people do their Sunday walks and so on. Only a small fence separates my small yard and patio from that road. I live in a pretty crowded area, with several of these terraced houses spread around my neighborhood, so seeing people walking on that road is pretty normal for me. Seeing random people standing on my patio is not. When I was 9, I usually got home from school about an hour before my mom got home from work. I lived maybe 50 meters away from school, so my mom figured I was mature enough to be home alone for around an hour before she got home. This one day, I had just gotten home from school. I did the usual thing, which was to make sure I locked the front door and double-checked that the back door leading to the patio was also locked. I was 9 and being alone was a little scary, even though it was in the middle of the day and only for 1 hour. Then I rushed to my room upstairs to play as much PlayStation as possible before my mom came home and made me do my homework. While playing, I heard this noise coming from outside my window. My room was located 1 floor over the patio, with a view to the road I told you about before. It was kind of like the sound of a cat, but my cat had been missing for over 3 months. Hope sparked, and I thought, did he finally come back? I ran downstairs to check if it was my cat, but the sight that met me gives me goosebumps just writing this. There was a man standing on my patio. A tall man with black hair covering half of his eyes, making him look like a male version of the Ring Woman or something. I could hear him making high-pitched sounds, almost like a cat meowing. A brown liquid was running down from his mouth, and I could see him spitting out my dad's stopped cigarettes. He was eating from the ashtray. I was frozen observing this. Eventually I snapped out of it, and screamed so loud that the man must have heard it. He didn't react, and just kept eating from the ashtray. I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, and called my mom, who called the cops. I've never been more terrified in my life. Laying in bed, under my sheets, shivering with fear, as I hear those creepy high-pitched noises from the man eating cigarette stumps from the ashtray on my patio. I kind of blacked out for a moment, because the next thing I remember is the police arriving on the road by my yard. I hear them talking to the guy, saying stuff like, "What are you doing? Get over here or we'll come down and arrest you," and so on. He didn't respond, but the high-pitched sounds were more frequent and louder. I decided to look through the window, feeling safe now that the cops were here. I could see 2 police officers standing by my fence, 1 man and a woman. I didn't see the creepy man, however, because he was standing directly 1 story under me and my field of view. The police jumped the fence, and I remember hearing the creepy man screaming louder than anything I've ever heard before. He charged the female police officer with his full force and knocked her out cold. The male officer immediately tased the man, leaving him shaking on the ground and screaming like an animal. The policeman struggled to keep him on the ground while putting the handcuffs on him, but eventually he managed to figure it out. After a while, he managed to wake up the female police officer, who seemed to be pretty badly hurt. He called for backup and an ambulance, and he sees me standing in the window above him. The expression on my face must have been something else, because he just looked at me and said, "I sure as hell hope you didn't see all that." I started to cry. By this time, my neighbors started to arrive, wondering what the hell was going on. One of my neighbors, an elderly woman, made me come down, and she took care of me until my mom came back home. The police took the man with them in the car and left. Before they left, they promised to come back and talk to us about what had happened. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The male police officer came back later that night and sat down with me and my mom to talk. He explained that the man on my patio was actually diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped a facility where mentally challenged people lived, located around 5 kilometers from where I live. He explained that the man had actually been living in my house 5 years ago, but he had been forced to move when his mom, his only caretaker, had died. The poor man probably thought he would find his mom in my house. He missed the routines and he missed living there with his mother. The police had to move him from the house that time 5 years ago because he was extremely strong. From what I heard, he had extreme tensions in the body because of the autism, making his muscles grow stronger or something. And this was the reason he acted the way he did when the police came this day. Still frightened, I told the police officer that he needed to make sure this would never happen again, and he promised it wouldn't. After a few sleepless nights, my life got back to normal. The years went by and the man didn't come back. Until 1 year ago. At this time, my mom and dad had moved out. I bought the house from them and I'm still living there today. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the patio when I see this random guy stopping on the road by my fence. He just stands there looking at me. I look at him and give him a nod. Then I hear the high-pitched noises. Holy shit, it's him. His hair had turned gray, but the high-pitched noises made me realize. My heart started racing, and I instantly remembered the reason why he was back. I realized that he must have managed to somehow escape again. Because I kept my cool a bit longer than when I was 9, I started to realize how sad I felt for the man. 16 years later, and he was still back to try and look for his mom. I decided to carefully ask him if he wanted to come down to the patio. He instantly jumped the fence. I started to think he would knock me out like he did with that police officer, but he didn't. He looked at me and he smiled. I offered him to sit down, but he didn't respond. I offered for him to come inside and he started laughing. We went inside and his face lit up. He was home. It reminded him of the life he had with his mom, and it almost made me tear up. All of a sudden, he sat down on my couch, turned on my TV, and switched directly to the cartoons. I observed him for a while, as he was completely just focused on them. I wanted him to enjoy the moment, so I didn't say anything. I called the facility to let them know. The caretakers arrived 10 minutes later, and after a lot of convincing, he got back up crying and they went back to the facility. I called the facility 2 days later, and we made a deal. His name is Tom, and I now consider Tom my friend. Every Sunday from the day he returned, Tom and his caretakers visit me to watch cartoons, and they say it's the highlight of his week. For several years, my thoughts were, let's not meet guy on my patio eating from the ashtray. But it's funny how now my thoughts are, let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons, my friend Tom. Okay, this happened a few years ago, around early December. I was playing a mobile game for around 3 months prior. Sorry for the murky description, but here's a short preview of said game. It's a fantastical medieval war-type game, where you level up your castle to get stronger troops and better defenses as you upgrade your buildings. It also features invading other castles after you played for more than 7 days. There are alliances formed where other players team up and work together on events. You can also edit your profile and change your picture. Global chat, alliance chat, and private chat are easily accessible to everyone. I got into a server a month later than the others. I discovered the game from an ad, and it was based off from one of my favorite series. Since I had played similar games before, I adjusted quickly and was recruited by one of the top alliances, which was also kind of infamous for its members being a bit too friendly with female gamers. I did use my own photo in my profile, but my hair was covering half of my face, and I had an anti-dusk mask on. Only my left eye was clear on that photo, and yet they still invited me in. I'm not gonna lie, I had a thought that I might run into some pesky guys, but I still accepted anyway. It was just my 3rd day playing, and I need all the resources I could get to strengthen my castle. Getting into alliances is a surefire way to get those donations early game. Besides, every group is bound to have their rotten crops. Most of them were pretty okay. The leader was really helpful, and he would tease the girls sometimes in the chat, but he would stop when we tell him to, or he would sense we were getting uncomfortable. There were a handful that were just straight up thirsty jerks. One guy said that girls are inferior to him. Another said that he'd give in-game currency to a girl who sex chats with him. And what particularly ticked me off was this dude claiming that I was his property, even going so far as to spam the global chat to warn other players not to try and flirt with me, or else he'd destroy them. Sheer idiocy. He was a wallet warrior, meaning a person who buys in-app purchases. This also means free players like me can't exactly fight back at him and expect to leave a decent dent on his stuff. The leader sent me a private message and apologized on his behalf, and told me he can't exactly kick the jerk out of the alliance because he was a valuable player, despite his insufferable behavior. The most I could do was block him and hope he stays in the alliance so he wouldn't attack me. He didn't, but instead he made dummy accounts and constantly sent me private chats. I was getting pissed with repeatedly blocking his accounts, so I finally conceded to his condition for him to stop spamming mails. That was for me to unblock his main account. For several days, he didn't talk to me that much, and when he did, he was actually pretty polite. The leader told me he must have turned a new leaf. I wasn't convinced, but I didn't shut him out completely. That was where it got really bad. Thinking back, I may have been a bit careless when I was talking to the other players. There were other female players in the group, and I quickly bonded and made friends. Sometimes we'd chat in the alliance chat just so it would be lively in there. The conversations were random, but there were snippets where we wrote out our information. Not the specifics, but I clearly remember saying my birth country and which school I attended. But the city, the street, the exact address, I didn't spill it. It was the first week in December, when a Christmas event was held in the game. By that time, I was not bothered by the jerk, and we could even hold civil, albeit short, conversations. I was talking with another female player when he typed in the alliance chat. "Hey, do you like flowers?" It was random and a sudden question, but I decided to answer. "I guess." A few seconds later, his message popped up. "Then do you like surprises?" Again, I wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but I didn't want to appear rude. Pleasant ones, yes. My friend had to go offline, so she said goodbye and sent me a virtual hug since we can't hug for real. It's just sort of become a greeting for the girls in the chat. I almost forgot about the jerk, but when he wrote, "You'll be moved to tears soon. You'll see. I'll give you more than virtual hugs." I was positively weirded out by his words, so I made an excuse and logged out of the game. It was nearing school break and classes were pretty chill, so I was just hanging out in the library to have some peace and quiet. One of the working students, a close friend, tapped me on the shoulder with a quizzical look on his face. "Hey, did you snag yourself a boyfriend without telling me?" "What? Why would you say that?" I asked, not seeing the connection at that time. "There was a bouquet of flowers sent to you. It's in the department office right now." That was where it all clicked. All the random questions, the creepy endliner. He found me. I was panicking so bad, to the point where I had to go to the clinic and skip the rest of my classes. I didn't accept the flowers. I didn't even want to see it. When I was asked what to do with the bouquet, I told them to throw it away. My username didn't even have any relation to my real name, and when I was asked for my name, I only gave them my nickname. It really creeped me out how this jerk managed to find where I live. I was scared out of my wits, and chatted with the leader about it. He too was shocked at this. He then sent me screenshots of a conversation of me, to which the jerk was doing most of the talking. The leader was sending clipped, dismissive responses, but the jerk didn't seem to notice. He was too immersed in his fantasies, horrible thoughts that still make my skin crawl to this day. I told him I was quitting the game and to apologize to the Alliance on my behalf. I didn't want the others to worry, so I had to make the leader tell a lie that I was too busy with my studies. I didn't exactly know how he tracked me down, but I spent the rest of the semester fearing for my life. I didn't go anywhere alone. Heck, I really hung out with my friends. Fortunately, they understood after I told them my situation. I graduated with paranoia clinging on my back. Even now, I couldn't get myself to play a similar game to the one where I unluckily met him. I was also extra wary to strangers, especially guys. After that flower incident, I didn't get any more surprises from him, and I hope it stays that way. This happened about 2 years ago. For context, I was living in college apartments for students, but unofficially, and my unit was on the first floor. It was a 3-bed, but I only had one roommate at the time who was far away for the weekend. I'm a small person, 5'3" and 120 pounds, and my dog is about 25 pounds, and not exactly fully equipped for self-defense. It was around 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I was in the midst of taking a bath. I heard my dog growl as her haunches went up, and I thought it was weird because she hardly ever does that. I thought, whatever, it's an apartment. Somebody's probably partying too loud or something. I got out, got dressed, and laid in bed with my book. I heard a knock at my door. Hello? I saw your light was on, and I was just wondering if I could use your phone. I was working on the lines around here, and my truck battery died. I need to call into work, and my phone died too. I ignore the voice, because I'm fully aware it could be dangerous. I don't respond, but looking out the peephole, I see an older man, about his mid-60s, wearing a blue jumpsuit with a white toolbox. He has gray hair and a gray mustache, and I'm wondering why he's working on lines, 1 on a Saturday, and 2 at around 10 p.m. It struck me as odd, so I didn't respond. About 3 minutes later, he knocks again, saying something along the lines of, "If I can just use your phone, I could get out of your hair. Sorry, I just need to call my boss and tell him." So I check the peephole again, and I notice there's no name tag or company on his jumper. I'm silent. My dog growls again, this time more angrily around the front door. She starts pacing and getting frustrated. I texted a friend or two that this was happening. Again, this time, after about 7 minutes, he knocks more abruptly. "If you don't want me to keep knocking, let me use your phone so I can get a ride. I know you're home. I can see your light." He was beginning to sound angry and frustrated at being ignored. I ignored him again, and my dog began to bare her teeth. She faced the door directly and began viciously barking. I've never seen her do that before or since. He pounded on the door again and didn't say anything at all this time. I looked back out the peephole, becoming scared for my safety. In my mind, thought, why does he have his toolbox with him if he could have left it in his car? And why does his company uniform not say the name? Why hasn't he moved on to another unit yet? I continued to ignore him, but at this point more out of shock. He pounded on the door once more, and my dog barked even louder and more aggressively. He yelled, "Fine! I'll have to walk down the street and ask for a phone there. Thanks for nothing." She barked for another minute or so, and eventually he left. I was concerned about him entering my side doors, so I locked them and just hoped he didn't, as I called some of my friends. Maybe this man genuinely needed help. Maybe he was working overtime. But it still bothers me today. Why did he stay at my unit for so long? He spent maybe 15 or 20 minutes trying to use my phone. It's possible his work uniform just wasn't labeled, but why bring the toolbox with you to ask for help? I didn't see what he had in there, but I would think it'd be heavy and he'd leave it in the truck. And also, he said, "I know you're home." I know maybe this one is small, but in a 3-bedroom unit, why would you specifically address someone as you and not say somebody? The most terrifying thing is, later that week, on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I told my facilities manager that there was a man on Saturday from their electrical company trying to get help for his truck battery. Our maintenance men do work on electrical lines. We don't hire contractors. They finished their electrical work near your unit last month, so there would be no reason to work there. I don't know why he lingered on my unit so long. I felt like prey, likely because I was. I had seen a white truck in the lawn outside my building for a couple of days before, and just assumed it was somebody's friend or something. Lots of people go in and out, but I really think this guy was there watching and waiting for a good moment. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I have a little bit of an update here for you guys. I've recently started streaming a little bit on Twitch. I don't know if you guys are interested in just hanging out and seeing a bit of gameplay of maybe Monster Hunter or some games like that, maybe a few horror games, but I'll leave a link to my Twitch in the description of the video below. As always, if you guys like the video, please leave a comment or perhaps like or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you'd like to message me, or you'd like to send in a story for me to read, or you have a suggestion for a story I should read, the links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below as well. This includes my Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and now, of course, my Twitch account. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible, but please guys be patient, because I do get a lot of messages, so if I don't respond to you right away within like a week or two, just be a little patient. I'll get to it as soon as I can. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the description of the email or message what the name of the story is, what the category of the story is, and how you would like to be credited in the video that the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, links to the music and the order in which the music appears will always be in the description below the video, so you can go ahead and check that out there. Last but not least, if you guys do enjoy my content, please take a look at my Patreon, and if you feel so inclined, maybe donate like $1 or something. Every little bit helps. It'll never be necessary, but of course, it's always an option if you guys would like to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.